This company has blood on its hands.
He's talking about Chiquita, the banana company, which paid nearly $2 million to a murderous paramilitary group that killed or massacred thousands of people in Colombia.
Nearly 250 Colombians who say they and relatives were victims of violence by Colombian right-wing paramilitaries have filed a lawsuit seeking more than $1 billion in damages from the Chiquita banana company.
Colombian citizens are suing Chiquita brand in federal court for allegedly paying death squads to murder 677 of their family members, according to the courthouse news.
Chiquita is blocking a 9/11 victims bill. The bill would make it easier for U.S. terror victims, like the victims of 9/11, to sue anyone that funds terrorism. In the last few years, Chiquita has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars lobbying against the bill. I'm confused. Does Chiquita have something against justice for 9/11 victims? Turns out, it's not about the victims from here, but about the victims of terror here, in Colombia, and the role the company played in the country's decades-long civil war.
We know, because Chiquita pled guilty to paying paramilitary groups $1.7 million over a 7-year period, and running them 3,000 Kalashnikov rifles as well.
Oh, it's getting hot!
Chiquita claimed they were paying the paramilitaries for security. In fact, they were paying for the subjugation of the Yoruba region so that they could grow bananas.
Michael Evans is a researcher at the National Security Archive, a DC nonprofit that obtains declassified government documents under the Freedom of Information Act. It's a treasure trove of scandals and secrets, buried in dusty boxes.
In 2007, we all learned for the first time that Chiquita had been for years making payments to the AUC, the United Self-Defense Forces of Colombia, which was an officially recognized terrorist group by the United States.
For 7 years, the company paid this violent right-wing militia more than $1.7 million, money the groups used to buy weapons, traffic drugs, and kill lots of people.
Because of what Chiquita did, between 4,000 and 14,000 people were directly killed by the paramilitaries that they paid and gave guns to. But moreover, their payments and support allowed the paramilitaries to take control of vast swaths of Colombia. That the paramilitaries you see today wreaking havoc in that country owe a lot of thanks to the support they got from Chiquita.
A few weeks ago, paramilitaries came here, threatening residents, reminding many of what they've done before.
En el 96, los paramilitares mataron 3 personas aquí en Rosalí y las metieron aquí a todas 3 aquí en esta fosa. Con los machetes lo cortan la cabeza, cortarla con los machetes a pedazos y luego la montaron ahí.
Past killings here have left people traumatized. Emilio is reluctant to talk about what's been going on here. He told us that groups of 200 men come into the village, wearing uniforms and carrying machine guns.
En la casa de enfrente, que está ahí, mataron a un hombre diciendo que era guerrillero. ¿Eso es lo que les dicen a ustedes también?
¿Usted sí cree que un guerrillero va a estar estable trabajando, arriando mulas, arriando maderas, arriando por ahí ganando, fleteando de 6 de la mañana a 6 de la tarde?
When the paramilitaries came back a few weeks ago, they told him they would chop him into pieces, so he left with his family. He returns during the week to work the land. He said he has no other choice if he wants to feed his wife and children.
Lo poquito que traemos de afuera por ahí, que los ahorritos que traemos de afuera los metemos a la finca, luego se pierden las fincas. ¿Por qué? Porque no nos dejan trabajar. Que no está pasando nada, que todo está tranquilo, que no hay grupos ilegales, pero nosotros los campesinos que sí vivimos el conflicto en las veredas, en el campo, nosotros sí sabemos que sí hay.
When you peel back the layers, you see they knew what they were doing was wrong. From 1989 to about 1997, they made payments to leftist guerrillas in the region. In 1997, Chiquita started paying their rival, the AUC, who was becoming more powerful. In 2001, the AUC was listed as a terrorist organization by the US, which was widely reported in the news in the US and Colombia. In 2003, one of Chiquita's own lawyers wrote several memos to company execs. Must stop payments. The company should not make the payment. Chiquita fessed up to the Department of Justice, who also told them to stop. But what did the company do? It continued making payments.
Those were some of their most profitable years ever. So just pulling out of Colombia would have been a huge financial loss for them.
In 2004, the company finally stopped paying the AUC. They sold off their subsidiary in Colombia and pleaded guilty to the Department of Justice for supporting terrorists. The fine they had to pay? $25 million. Or get this, about 3 days worth of their annual revenue, and they had 5 years to pay that off. And what did the people whose relatives were murdered get? $25 million that Chiquita paid
Goes to the U.S. Treasury.
So none of that ever went to any of the families of these victims. That was considered by many a slap on the corporate wrist. And the kicker, not one Chiquita exec went to jail for the crime, even though they were in on it.
We found out from Salvatore Mancuso, who was one of the top paramilitary leaders, that it was not just Chiquita paying the paramilitaries, but also Dole and Del Monte. That in fact, Dole was the tax collector for the paramilitaries. They would go around to all the companies, collect the taxes given to the paramilitary groups. And yet, Dole and Del Monte have never been prosecuted. And there's a number of companies also that have made payments to the paramilitaries. According to Salvatore Mancuso in his department, the Cesar department, he said every company there was paying them. And in order to keep Mancuso quiet, he will probably be walking the streets of the U.S. Very soon. He was taken out of Colombia. He was going to be tried for his crimes, which amounted to killing at least 1,000 people in Colombia. The CIA helped take him and about 39 other paramilitary leaders out of Colombia so that they would not be tried for those crimes, because they were worried he'd start talking about the companies that were helping him carry out his operation.
This is very crazy. I want you to elaborate more on this, that there are how many people that are?
40 paramilitary leaders. By the way, this is according to the New York Times.
Incredible.
Who did an incredible expose on this. In order to get light sentences, they were supposed to fully confess to all their crimes. Uribe started to get nervous because they started to confess to their connections with the Congress there, with he himself, with corporations, and he said, hey, I can't let this happen. This is nuts. So the U.S. helped him out. In one evening, they took about 40 of these guys out of Colombian prisons, took them to the U.S., have tried them here only for drug-related offenses, cut plea deals with all of them, giving them a short sentence, even though, again, some have murdered thousands of people. According to the New York Times, one of the paramilitary leaders was known as the Drill because of his penchant for molesting girls as young as 9 years old. He was also one of the paramilitary leaders brought to the United States. And he will most likely get out very soon from prison, and he is asking to stay in the United States,
nice.
And probably will be allowed to do that.
What they have are thousands more pages of Chiquita's own corporate records that relate to all kinds of potential illegal activities.
So they're trying to block the release of these documents.
Right, and if Chiquita's position is that the evidence should exonerate them, or that the evidence shows that they were victims, then why are they fighting so hard to protect this information from seeing the light of day?
What could be in those dusty files? Whatever it is, 9/11 victims continue to wait for a bill to pass in Congress. And Chiquita, in a proposed merger with an Irish banana company, is making plans to return to the same region in Colombia. I asked them what strategy they have in place to deal with paramilitaries this time. I never got an answer.